we're going to get started if everybody wants to take their seats. Good evening. Hi, everyone. You brave, wet souls. Thank you for coming here tonight. My name is Meredith Dayton, and I'm the Director of Membership and Programs at the Ebell of Los Angeles. We are so glad to welcome you here tonight. Before I start, show of hands, who's never been here? Nice! Yes, new faces. I have the honor of sharing some information about the organization you are gathering in tonight. The Ebell is a women's nonprofit with a proud 130-year history. That's right. We look great for our age. We were founded at a time when women had limited opportunities, no right to vote, little access to education, almost no control over their own finances, and the list goes on. Our founders recognized the need for a space where women could come together, motivate one another, and make their voices heard. They knew that creating such a space would help women grow, lead, and make lasting change. Today, our mission remains focused on inspiring women, building community through arts, education, culture, service, and the stewardship of our historic campus. We are committed to providing women with a place to learn, share, and shape the world around them. Tonight, we are honored to welcome our partners, the Geena Davis Institute and Nokia Bell Labs, as we explore, yes, we can clap, as we explore how Hollywood can authentically depict women in tech. It's essential that we continue to create space for women in this field, ensuring that they have a voice in shaping the future of technology, and it is my privilege to play a small role in advancing this cause tonight. All right, thank you again for being here. Please consider becoming a member of the Ebell to support more events like this. Your presence and support help make the Ebell a powerful force for women in Los Angeles and beyond. Now it's my pleasure to welcome President and CEO of the Geena Davis Institute, as well as an Ebell member, Madeline Nonno, to the stage. Enjoy the evening.
Thank you. Yeah, get out. Yeah. Hello, everybody. Confronting the precipitation. I had to look up what's the scientific name for rain. But I want to formally introduce our wonderful ASL interpreters, Lucy Roberts and Amy Rodriguez. So thank you very much for being with us. I'd also like to kick us off with a land acknowledgement. So we acknowledge that on the land on which we are gathered here today are the traditional lands belonging to the Tongva Nation. So tonight, we come with respect and gratitude for the Tongva people who still remain stewards of this land. So, 2025 marks Nokia Bell Labs' 100th birthday. It's an honor to be their partner. And I thought, given that February 11th was International Day of Women and Girls in STEM and Black History Month, I wanted to read a quote from May Carroll Jemison, American engineer and former NASA astronaut. And she said, "The difference between science and the arts is not that they are different sides of the same coin or even different parts of the same continuum, but rather they are manifestations of the same thing. The arts and sciences are avatars of human creativity." And I thought that was really very appropriate for what we were going to talk about tonight. I also wanted to give a shout out to Dr. Jose More. Where are you, Jose? Who is with me, leads a capstone for the SOA, which is the Strategic Opportunity, the STEM Opportunity Alliance, led by the American Association for the Advancements of Science, whose goals are to add 20 million new STEM professionals to the U.S. economy. So we're going to hear a lot about that. And unfortunately, Geena could not be here tonight, but she has a very special message that we'd like to play.
Good evening, everybody. I am so sorry that I can't be with you tonight in person, but you are in for an inspiring and thought-provoking summit. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to express my gratitude to Nokia Bell Labs for entrusting my institute as their partner in bringing together Hollywood and technology for their first ever Hollywood Summit. It's an honor to collaborate on this important initiative, and I extend my heartfelt congratulations to Nokia Bell Labs on 100 years of groundbreaking research, advancing communications, computing, and the internet in ways that have transformed our world. So tonight's summit brings together an extraordinary lineup of speakers from across the technology sector, media and content creation, united by a commitment to addressing an issue deeply important to me: how we can more effectively portray women in technology on screen to inspire future generations off screen. Because when we see women thriving in STEM in the stories we watch, it shapes perceptions, it breaks down barriers. It sends a powerful message to young girls everywhere that they belong in these fields. Although I am unable to join you in person, I have no doubt that tonight will be filled with insightful discussions and impactful presentations and meaningful collaborations. We are shaping together a more inclusive and equitable future across all industries. Thank you for being part of this vital conversation. I look forward to hearing about the ideas and innovations that emerge from this incredible gathering. Have a great time. Thank you.
As Geena said, and we've all said, it's just such an honor to be partners with Nokia Bell Labs as they celebrate their 100-year-old birthday. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Thierry E. Klein, President, Bell Labs Solutions, Research at Nokia Bell Labs. Given his experience at Nokia Bell Labs pioneering research, Thierry is at the forefront of driving the technological advancements that can help reshape how we see and how we show the future of women in tech. His work has shaped the future of telecommunications, automotive, and green technology, earning him prestigious awards, patents, we love patents, and recognition. Please welcome Thierry E. Klein.
First of all, thank you, Madeline. Thank you to Geena, and thank you all for coming. We typically, as researchers, we don't do Hollywood summits, so this is a little bit of a first for us. But we've been looking forward to this for a long time. We started the partnership with GDI about a year ago, and it's really important to find these collaborations because we really believe that increasing diversity in STEM disciplines is absolutely important for us. It's not just the right thing to do, which it is, of course, but it's really also a strategic objective for us as a company, for us as an industry, and I would put in front of you for us as a country. So tonight, I just want to give you a little bit of a perspective of who we are as Bell Labs, what do we do, why it's important to us, and why we're really excited about this summit. I'll give a little bit that intro presentation, and then Anne-Lee from our team will talk a little bit about how stereotypes and the portrayal of women in STEM disciplines and technology, how they influence decisions that girls and young women make when they choose their professional careers. And then we have two exciting panels, and we figured we'll organize one panel where the tech industry is talking, maybe coming more from the tech side, and maybe one panel talking more about Hollywood. But the theme is, what can we do together to really collaborate and increase diversity in STEM disciplines? I should really say STEAM disciplines, not just STEM. I guess I'm pointing always at the wrong thing. There you go. As Madeline said a couple of times, and Geena said as well, we're celebrating 100 years of Bell Labs. I'm not sure if you know Bell Labs, but we're now part of Nokia, but we have a long history, started in the US with Alexander Graham Bell, who invented the telephone, so our history goes back to that. Thank you. Thank you, or sorry that we invented the phone and spending all so much time on your phones now. I lost my thought. Yeah, it's 100 years. We're the research part of Nokia, and we've always been a research organization, so we consider ourselves to be one of a few really industrial research labs. We're not doing academic research, but we're thinking far ahead, 5, 7, 10 years out in the future, and then developing technologies, but putting it in an industrial context. We're now part of Nokia. We kind of follow the mergers, acquisitions in the telecom industry, and we always follow whatever the mother company is, but our mission's been essentially the same: solve the hard industrial problems, or hard problems that shape how industry, society, and people talk to each other, interact with each other, communicate with each other. And our goal is to have an impact on everyday lives. And I think it's kind of fitting that we got this partnership with GDI this year, since, Madeline, you're celebrating 20 years. And we're very honored to be at your event in December, right here, not here, but LA. So I think it's fitting that we celebrate 120 together, and hopefully a lot more to come, more of these celebrations. So just one slide on what have we been doing in those 100 years, and I would put in front of you that some of these are key technologies that we've invented. I think all of you have some of our technology in your pockets, or in your purses, or in your bags tonight, and you may not even know it. Just as one example, we invented the transistor some 70 years ago, and you may not know this tiny device, but your iPhone has 18 billion transistors in it. And so it has completely revolutionized the computing and electronics industry in your phones, in your computers, in any device that uses electronics. And to give you an idea of how revolutionary it is, if your iPhone were built on vacuum tubes, which was the technology of choice at that point, your iPhone would be the size of the Empire State Building. Okay? So imagine how that was really transformative. We've also invented a lot of other things. I would say solar cell. Again, you may not associate Bell Labs with solar cells. We also built the first communication satellite. Not the first satellite, but the first communication satellite that really allowed voice, video, and TV broadcast across the Atlantic and brought the continents together in terms of communicating, sharing information. The funny story on that is the initial broadcast was supposed to be President Kennedy, an address that President Kennedy was doing, and it was supposed to be broadcast to Europe. He was late, and instead they showed a Cubs baseball game. And this is how Europeans got introduced to baseball. So there are a number of technologies, and if you're interested, go to the Bell Labs webpage. There's a lot of information on everything that we've done. We've also been very fortunate to have been recognized with a lot of awards for the inventions over the last 100 years. Notably, we have 10 Nobel Prizes. We have 5 Turing Awards, which is the Nobel Prize of Computer Science. And since we're in Hollywood, I want to point out that we have 1 Oscar, 2 Grammys, and 3 Emmys. All right. Now, we're very quick to point out that this is not for acting. We're not very good actors. These are typically technology awards that we got for stereo sound, high definition TV. The Oscar we got in 1936 for a multi-channel high frequency receiver, whatever that is, but that's what it was. So these are the awards we say that are given before the show on TV. So you never see Bell Labs people on TV getting these awards, but we're quite proud of these awards because they show that we have fundamentally transformed a lot of industries, not just the communication industry. One point about these awards is nobody in Bell Labs has these as a goal. Nobody has an annual goal to get a Nobel Prize, but we believe you get these awards if you do meaningful, impactful research that change the world. Then you get Nobel Prizes, but nobody has a Nobel Prize as their annual objective. So now I want to show you a video that we created about women in Bell Labs over the last 100 years.
For over a century, Bell Labs has been a hub of innovation driven by the brilliance of women in mathematics, computing, science, and engineering. We have been driving technological innovation, shaping communications, and deepening our understanding of the world. Our legacy is built on diversity, making our breakthroughs imaginative, innovative, and impactful. Right from the start, women have played a significant role at Bell Labs. From the early days of human computation, where women were crucial to groundbreaking engineering advancements, to those who designed the communications network infrastructure of the future, women at Nokia Bell Labs have changed the way we experience the world. Women such as Sally Mead, our first mathematician, who solved complex network transmission problems and did work that was crucial to developing early radar technology. Elizabeth Armstrong Wood, our first female PhD scientist, whose research in crystallography was instrumental to the development of superconductors and lasers. Erna Schneider Hoover, a member of the Inventors Hall of Fame, whose invention received one of the first ever software patents and paved the way for ultra-reliable electronic switching. Shirley Ann Jackson, who did important research for the development of semiconductors, and many of the other women who created the first Bell Labs computer operating system, developed the first programming languages, laid the groundwork for lab-on-a-chip devices and quantum optics, as well as pioneered digital imaging and AI algorithms that are still used today. Throughout the past century, the women of Bell Labs made history, receiving the most esteemed awards in science and technology. Their achievements are recognized globally, as evidenced by honors, including the National Medal of Technology and Innovation, the National Medal of Science, and the Wolf Prize in Mathematics. Today, our researchers are turning imagination into innovation. These women are developing out-of-this-world communication networks for space missions to the moon and beyond, pioneering AI and machine learning solutions to build a better, safer, and responsible world, advancing the digitalization of industry to dramatically improve worker safety and productivity, inventing technologies that provide a digital sixth sense to change how we experience the world and reimagine the future of networks, creating quantum technologies to radically transform industries and reshape how we live. 100 years of innovation. Imagination fuels our journey, and we're just getting started.
Thank you. So now I want to talk a little bit about what is our journey right now on increasing diversity in Bell Labs. And I got my current role about 3.5 years ago, and I've been at Bell Labs for 24 years, and I realized what's the difference between a researcher, a department head, a lab leader, or president of Bell Labs and leading the whole thing, or co-leading it with one of my colleagues. And the main difference is, before, when you're a department head or a lab leader, you're responsible for what you do, for what the research team does. But when you're president of Bell Labs, you're also responsible for who you are and what are your principles. And there's nobody else who's accountable for that. So I started thinking, what do I want to focus on beyond just the technology that we develop? What is important? And I realized that there are 3 things that are important when we develop technology. One is sustainability. The other is responsibility. We don't want to do just technology for technology's sake. It has to be sustainable and responsible. And the other is, who are we as an organization? Who are we as a team? And diversity was important, that we want to have most diverse teams. And to be honest, our trajectory is not very good. If we look at the 1960s, the math department at Bell Labs was gender balanced in the 60s. Right now, we are far from that. So the question is, what can we do about it? And I have to give credit to Anne. She's been really fantastic. She's been leading our diversity focus for a long, long time. And I learned a lot from conversations with Anne 3-4 years ago. And I said, I need to become more educated on it. And you've really been helpful in our journey and my journey on this. And so the question is, what have we been doing and why are we doing it? And as I said, it's absolutely the right thing to do, but for us it goes beyond that. And I want to share with you a little bit what we're doing to increase diversity. We started an action program in the labs. This is not driven from the company down. This is really bottom up inside the research organization, but we hope to create the blueprint for the company as a whole. And it has essentially 4 pillars. The main one, well, not the main one, the first one I should say, is really about attracting top talent and how do we retain top talent. Because it's one thing to attract the best researchers that you can. Now we can talk about what's the definition of best, and I think that's also an important question to address. But you also want to retain that talent. You want that talent to feel supported and giving them the environment that they can thrive in. So hiring top talent and retaining top talent is the first one. The second one, then we said, how do we create more visibility for what we do and what the women in Bell Labs have been doing and are continuing to do? And that's what led us, for example, to create that video. And this is internal visibility in the company, but also external visibility. And it starts with very simple things. When we have customer meetings, how do we not take always the same person to give presentations to customers? How do we, when we have keynote presentations at conferences, how do we open up to the entire population of Bell Labs to give those presentations? So the visibility internally and externally is really important. Then we said, okay, those two are really things that are very much close to us. They're internally focused, and we can do something about right now. But the problem that we see is there are just not enough women going into the STEM disciplines. So if we want to increase the diversity of our teams, but you see that only 18% of graduates in the US in computer science are women, you go like, that is a problem. We should encourage more women to go into the engineering disciplines that we're hiring from. But that's a generational thing. So now I'm talking about things that we feel like we can make a difference, we can influence things, but I will probably long be retired by the time we see really the change. But I hope that when I'm retired, I'm looking back and saying, there's more than 18% of women that graduate with computer science degrees. I will never know what are all the things that change, but I hope that we've done our part to help change that. If we consider ourselves to be thought leaders and technology leaders, it's not just about solving the really hard problems, that's also thought leadership to drive that change. So then we said, what can we do to help change the perception and get more young girls and women to be interested in STEM disciplines? So we have a student outreach program. We started a scholarship program. And then we said, well, it goes even further back, and that's what led us to the partnership with Madeline and GDI, to saying, how do we really change that? Because we can do all the things we want, but Hollywood has a really powerful voice to show that girls and women can have very successful careers in STEM. So that led us sort of from the left to the right, where it becomes more short-term, more immediate to generational things. And that's really what brought us to tonight. So now that's what we're doing, why we're doing this. That diversity and inclusion is it's not just the right thing to do, it is actually a strategic business objective. And there's some statistics from a study from National Academy of Engineering that showed that diverse teams are provably more productive, produce more novel results, higher quality research outputs. So why would you not want to have diverse teams? If you're looking to hire the best team to solve the hardest problems in the world, why would you limit your talent pool to half of the population? It just doesn't make any sense. You're shooting yourself in the foot if you don't do that, or if you do that, right? So for us, it is really important, not just for the right thing to do, but really to get the most creative, most innovative teams. And that has diversity in all aspects: gender, racial background, ethnic background, cultural backgrounds, country of origin. I was not born in the US, so I'm grateful that I moved to the US, but that's part of the diversity. So the most diverse teams are provably the most productive research and innovation teams. We also know when we look at our next generation of researchers and engineers that we would hire, they don't want to join teams that are not diverse. So on one side, we know we need diverse teams, but we also cannot recruit those teams if our environment is not diverse. They just will not join us. So this is really important for us as a research organization, as a company, and I would say for any tech company, to really think about this and not just buy into sort of the rhetoric that we hear right now, but really think about, can you be successful if you're not diverse? And I would then take it even further and saying for us as a country, it's important because other countries are doing that. When we look at, on the left side, it's maybe a little bit small, but China has surpassed the US in terms of scientific publications. China and India are surpassing us in terms of scientific publications and patents. So for us as a country, we talk a lot about technology leadership and innovation leadership, but we're shooting ourselves in the foot by not having the most diverse teams, and we're falling behind compared to other countries. So beyond all the things that we said, I think it's really important for us to think about what do we want to achieve and how do we achieve that. And I do think that the only way to get there is by having diverse research engineering teams. So I've probably gone over my slot. So sorry for that, Madeline. Apparently I do have a reputation for that. But I want to conclude here and just say I really appreciate all of you coming, and I look forward to any conversations. I look forward to the panels, and let's work together. This is the starting point. I hope that we'll have a lot more of these meetings, and any ideas that come out of it. This session, future meetings will be very helpful, and we'd love to hear from everybody. And any thoughts, you can always reach out to us. Find ways to collaborate, share your ideas, tell us when we're wrong. And let us know how we from a tech sector can also support what you're all doing. Thank you very much. I want to introduce Anne Lee to you. Anne is a researcher and Bell Labs fellow at Bell Labs. Long distinguished research career, but in our company also an absolute champion for diversity in research and technology. So, and as I said, she's been really helpful in educating me and helping me on my journey. Thank you, Anne.
Okay, I'm going to use the podium. Okay, thank you so much for the introductions, and thank you all for coming, especially in this inclement weather. It's great to see such a big crowd. So, I like to think of myself as a technologist at heart and an electrical engineer and computer scientist by training. I've been in tech, in telecom for over 35 years, almost 40 years now. And I'm alarmed by the precipitous drop in the number of women participating in tech, especially for the last 20 years or so. I believe that a primary cause of this is the negative stereotyping of women in tech. And so I'll explain why in this short presentation. So I'd like to begin with an anecdote that I think illustrates the problem very well. In 2015, this young lady was asked by her company to participate in a recruiting ad campaign. And it was for software engineers. They had a lot of open positions. And so this is the ad that they came up with. As soon as this ad was posted, negative comments started appearing online. And I'm going to read one that's representative of most of the other ones. This is some weird haphazard branding. I think that they want to appeal to women, but are probably just appealing to dudes. Perhaps that's the intention all along. But I'm curious if people with brains find this quote remotely plausible, and if women, in particular, buy this image of what a female software engineer looks like. I don't know. Weird. Well, she wasn't the type that was going to sit back and quietly take this. So she went on Twitter. It was still called Twitter back then. And she tweeted, hashtag, I look like an engineer. And she inadvertently started a tweet storm. Over 75,000 female engineers, including myself, tweeted, hashtag, I look like an engineer. Now, looking back 10 years, this was a cathartic moment for us, those of us who've been told during our careers that we don't look like engineers. But unfortunately, it didn't actually do anything to change the stereotype. It didn't change the view of people about who they thought should be engineers. This is actually ironic, since computing and computer programming was originally considered women's work. In fact, the term computer originally referred to a profession and not a machine. As far back as the 1600s, a computer was a person who did mathematical calculations for a living. And by the late 1800s, most of these computers were actually women. And this was true in Nokia Bell Labs as well. When we were founded in 1925, we had groups of female computers that worked for us. And that was true in other companies and institutions as well. If you watch the movie Hidden Figures, then you have seen Black female mathematicians working as computers at NASA in the 1950s and 1960s. In fact, in 1967, Cosmopolitan magazine published an article called The Computer Girls. And in it, Grace Hopper, who's a pioneer in computing, was quoted as saying, "Women are naturals at computer programming." And a director of ACM, which is a professional society for computer scientists, he said, I don't know of any other field outside of teaching that has more opportunity for women. So, then what happened? Why is that the percentage of female computer scientists today is only at 25%? Well, if we look back, the reason why women were the pioneers of computing in the first place is because back then, male engineers thought that programming was administrative work, and therefore it was women's work. When they finally realized that it was actually intellectually challenging and had a lot of potential, then they put in effort to push women out. And one of the ways in which they did that, one of the tools they used, was negative stereotyping of the women that were working in tech. I'm going to share one example of what the tech industry did. As far back as 1961, there was this journal for IT called Datamation, and they published a denigrating profile of women computer programmers. It said that a female programmer chewed tobacco, was cross-eyed, and had a figure resembling a sack of potatoes. So preteen and teenage girls are hypersensitive to clear messages from society that the pursuit of STEM comes at a steep cost of societal disapproval and negative views of their femininity. This drives many girls away. So, I talked about the cost to individual girls and women. What is the cost or impact to society? While formerly male-dominated fields like medicine and law have reached gender parity in graduation rates, the computer science field, which was once considered women's work, have plummeted in female graduates. The impact of current stereotypes are also causing a staggering dropout rate for the women who do manage to graduate and get a job in tech. 50% leave the field by the age of 35. Women are 2.5 times more likely to leave tech than any other field. And the main reason that these women give is that the toxic culture of the workplaces that they worked in. The workplaces make them feel like they don't belong. Our societal messages also tell boys and men that women don't belong in tech. But there's a Hollywood solution to this cultural problem. Hollywood helped to solve the gender balance and gender parity issues in the professions of journalism, forensics, medicine, and law. You did this by positively portraying women as equals to men in these professions, and these women characters were glamorous and also had interesting personal lives. Hollywood, you can do the same for women in tech in Western culture. And I say Western culture because these Western stereotypes are not biological fact, and they are not universal. I'll explain with 3 examples from other parts of the world. Let's start with China. In China, there are shows like this C-drama called Cute Programmer that bluntly sends the message to women that computer science is for them. The main characters, both men and women, also even promote Western computer pioneers like Ada Lovelace and Grace Hopper as role models. China's encouragement of women to pursue STEM has helped them surpass the US in published research papers, as Thierry was talking about, as well as filed patents. From 2001 to 2020, China grew its capacity of women inventors at almost double the rate of the US. 42% in China and 22% in the US. Now, let's look at the Middle East next. You may be surprised, as I was, when I learned that in Tunisia and other Arab countries, there is a lullaby from a popular 1961 movie that mothers like to sing to their baby girls. And the lyrics go, "And I will say, my girl has grown up. She will be an engineer. Oh, people, I love her. She's her mother's lovely girl. Also, did you know that in Iran, 70% of STEM graduates are women? And finally, let's look at India. In India, parents actually encourage their daughters to study computer science because they feel that IT provides a stable job and pays well. So if you look at the percentage of computer science degrees that are awarded to women in India, it's near 50%. In contrast, in the US, we've been stuck at about 20-25% for the last couple of decades. Cultural messages make a huge difference. So, computing and computer programming started as women's work. In the West, the stereotype flipped, becoming work for men, specifically those who fit a certain profile, and the few women who are female versions of that profile. Let's put it that way. Let's leave those toxic stereotypes behind. Stereotypes are not biological fact and they're not universal. So let's not discourage half our talent away, or else we're going to lose our lead in tech and lose our leadership in the world. Instead, let's create a new image of tech that includes a positive portrayal of women. So when you create a new female tech character for your storyline, think about what characteristics would make teenage girls in your life want to pursue a tech career. Your daughter, your niece, your young female audience. What kind of character would make them say, I want to do that? Thank you. And before we start our panel, I wanted to share this QR code. It's to the YouTube video clip for the 1961 movie, Warm Nights, where actress and singer Saba sings the Arabic lullaby, Habibet Omaha, her mother's beloved, to her baby girl. This song is also available on Spotify. And while you're doing that, I'll read the expanded lyrics to the song. My darling, tomorrow you'll grow up and go to school. And they'll say, my daughter is clever and her grades are good. Your image grows in my eyes from morning to evening. And I'll say, she's grown up now. She'll be an engineer. Oh, people, I love her. She's her mother's beloved. Thank you. Yes.
You know, when you think about the power of Hollywood and storytelling, what happens in the world to make believe has real-world impact, right? Our tagline at the Institute has been, if she can see it, she can be it. If they can see it, they can be it. And our STEM work has always been concentrated on what we see on screen. And we've been very, very blessed to be generously funded by If Then, which is an initiative of Lighthill Philanthropies. And for some of you who may not be familiar, the reason why we started studying STEM is over the past 20 years, we've always looked at not only the quantity of female presence, but do they have agency? Do they have a job? Are they wearing clothes? And so it was very interesting to us that in around 2008, President Obama said we were falling behind in America in the technology revolution because our kids weren't pursuing STEM. And we thought, well, that's interesting. We've always looked at careers, but the Bureau of Labor Statistics doesn't have a category for STEM. So we kind of parsed it together. We looked at life sciences, computer engineering, mathematics, etc. And that's how we came to do our first, analysis. And when we looked over 15 years ago, it was a 15-to-1 ratio of male STEM characters to female STEM characters. And forget about any other intersectionality in terms of LGBTQIA or disability or race ethnicity. And even now, we launched the most recent update last year, Still, over 15 years of looking at female STEM characters, the percentage of female STEM characters only increased 1 point over 15 years, from 37 to 38%, which may sound great when you map it against the real world, but most of that, 65% of that, are doctors, right? We got a lot of doctors, but we're not seeing mathematics, computers, where the jobs are. Cybersecurity, there's hundreds of thousands of jobs in cybersecurity that can't, be filled. So I want to introduce our panel. Next to me is Sarah DeWitt, Senior Vice President and General Manager of PBS Kids at PBS. Kirsten Van Ness, award-winning actor, published author, and radical peacekeeper. And Valerie Weiss, who is a scientist and an award-winning filmmaker and director. So what was interesting, we also did a survey of a few thousand women and girls because we wanted to understand the leaky pipeline. And what was interesting in our recent survey, 71% of the respondents said it's important to have female representation of STEM characters on screen, which was a 20 percentage point increase from 2018. And 62% of the girls and young women say they actually enjoy watching movies or TV shows about STEM-related topics, and 72% wished that there were more female STEM characters in movies and on TV. And we have one great living legend, an example of that, which brings me to my first question for Kirsten. Her portrayal of the fabulous Penelope Garcia on Criminal Minds was the highest cited female STEM character, with over 77% of respondents citing that her character had a direct influence on their interest in STEM. So,
I want to applaud for Penelope.
Yeah.
Not me.
So what's interesting is you've been acting since a child. You had a day job as a teacher, and you would teach computers. And then when you got the job, it was kind of a homage to Penelope. But can you talk about your reaction to that statistic, and also your journey of combining not only what you were doing in teaching, but then acting, and here you are.
Oh, and I want to be clear. I mean, that was my day job, was public school teaching, but I was not a good computer teacher. Do not. Let's be clear. But that was one of the subjects I did have to teach. You had sent me that statistic, and it just made my heart sing, because I'm passionate about people, especially feminine bent creatures, being empowered with knowledge. It's so important that we take command of our brains and take command of our futures that way. And it was really important when I got the job. No one said, they just bought it. You put we do live in a society, sadly, where you put glasses on someone, you're like, you're a scientist if you're a girl. But it was really important to me when I got it, like, okay, I want to make this compelling. There's that quote in Toni Cade Bambara, I think her name is, and I'm paraphrasing, but she says something about the job of the artist is to make the revolution irresistible. And that's what I wanted to do. I want to make that irresistible. I want to make it like, it's fun, it's good. Like, it's good to be smart, and you can do things when you're smart. I'm proud that I am also the first character on that show, and it's been on for 19,000 years, she was the first one you saw that had an active, intimate life. She was the first one that you saw, like, that had a lot of joie de vivre, and she's the one who can do these things that, these incredible computer things. So, yeah, I'm quite heartwarmed by it.
So, follow-up question for you. Were there other skills that you learned for the role, just because fan people are going to examine everything that you're doing?
Okay. Sort of. It's a fantasy program. The FBI does not have a jet for themselves. The things that I am doing, the more you go down the rabbit hole of computer science, you realize she's making a lot of egregious errors that you should not be doing at the FBI. You should not be going into people's personal data. You should not be, just no. Right now, you would be confused because apparently there's someone in some places that are doing things with our data, but you're not supposed to do that. That is a no-no. And I know that what I tried to do is I try to toe that line, and the writers do too, of like, she both feels conflicted that she doesn't want to be, pillaging through people's personals, but also that's the job. In real life, and I think that women that are involved in STEM, anyone understands that I am trying to make it look attractive. It is not. There is no world where the stuff that I am doing on that show, but I try to understand, like, okay, she uses open source, she uses Linux, what is Linux? I gathered all that stuff because I wanted to, and you hope that with that living in your brain as you go do the thing that it informs it. And then I use what I have in my zone of genius to put that out. You know what I mean? Like, that's the best answer I can give.
I like that
She's
answer.
a way better typer than me. Don't look down at my hands.
Thank you for that. So Valerie, you're a scientist who makes movies, and you also did a wee bit of acting. It was a little bit of a family affair when you were a kid, and then you said you had this amazing teacher in 10th grade that taught biology like it was the world's greatest story, which led you to not only get a degree from Princeton in molecular biology, but also a PhD in biophysics. She's a real slacker from Harvard. So can you talk about bringing that lived experience in science to your foray into filmmaking, which was Losing Control?
Can you hear me? Yep. Thank you. What a lovely introduction, and so nice to be here with you guys. And I so admire the work you both do, both on your show and Sci Kids on PBS is one of my favorite shows. If you haven't seen it, it's real kids and real scientists doing real experiments. I think it's one of the best things I've ever seen, so everyone go and watch that. And thank you, Madeline, for having me. Yes, so for me, everyone's like, science and filmmaking, it's so different, but really they're the same for me. And I think I realized that as a kid, what I loved about acting was figuring out the subtext. Like, why do characters do what they do? Why is someone exhibiting behavior that makes no sense? Why does someone we love not love us anymore? And those were the questions I was really interested in as an actor. And then, when I took this biology class with Mr. Sharon Bura, who I still keep in touch with, it was amazing because suddenly I understood molecules might be why we do what we do. Genetics, evolution, our habitat, all inform behavior. And I could see sort of this bigger spectrum of influence on why we do what we do. And to me, it just helped me not judge people as much, instead get curious, because I think if we're going to solve the world's problems, when we judge, we close ourselves off, we close our hearts, we close our minds, and it's much harder to make the world a better place. So I've always chosen to stay open and curious, and I do that in my work as a filmmaker now, and I really credit my time as a scientist with the process that I use. And so, the first thing I do when I get a script is really figure out what's the hypothesis, what is the story trying to tell, and for me it's usually that takes the form of the theme, what's the message. For instance, I directed a movie with Taryn Manning starring as a mom who has bipolar disorder and a very codependent relationship with her only child, and so my process was to research the disorder and neuroscience, very, very deeply and everything around the disorder, but then to take a step back and say, what's universal about this? Because as a filmmaker, I want to make work. I could stay in the lab and make some, do research that no one's ever going to know about, but I moved into this industry so I could reach lots and lots of people, and so in this case of this movie, the universal theme that I discovered was, is it okay to leave someone you love?
which I think we can all relate to, right? When a relationship doesn't serve you anymore, can you leave or do you need to stay? So that's sort of a little window into my process that I use every time I am, dissecting a script. And so I find them very similar. And plus, when you're a scientist, you fail every single day. Otherwise, you'd get your PhD in a week. And so that kind of persistence and tenacity. And how many scientists? We have a lot of scientists here tonight, right? Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about. And it's not for the faint-hearted. So I think that's really helped me, in this industry, is being very tenacious. So.
And we're going to talk a little bit more about how you apply it on set in a little
Yes,
bit.
yes.
But I'm going to turn over to Sarah. So, PBS Kids has had, I think, some of the most STEM shows, such as Sci Girls, STEM from the Start, and the upcoming Weather Hunters with Al Roker and Deep Reserves in the Room, who's a dear friend who is working on that show. And you said in some of your videos that your passion is harnessing the power of technology as a positive. And you also talked about Fred Rogers and kids thinking of technology as play. And you also have built data on top of that. So can you talk a little bit about that and your approach?
Sure. And I just want to say, too, I'm so happy to be here. We have really just for many years enjoyed our partnership with the Geena Davis Institute and you, Madeline. You've brought so much data to us to help us really understand the impact of the work we can do. And at PBS Kids, we have known for a really long time that it's very clear in the research that if a child sees a positive representation of someone who looks like them, they will have higher self-esteem and they'll have better success in school. And so we really have taken that to think about the content we create, and we're really focused on kids 2 to 8. And so we're thinking about what is that positive representation we can give to really be a mirror for kids so they can see someone who looks like them and realize, oh, I can do that too. You can see it, you can be it. But also to be a window to show them other kids and other folks in the world who are doing exciting things and get them really passionate about learning. So this is a really important thing for us. Learning is fun, and kids can see someone who looks like them getting really excited about a subject and wanting to get deeper into it and realize that that can be really fun and that can be exciting and it can be funny. And so really just thinking about how do we put those role models out there and let kids see them. So we have lots of shows, as you mentioned, that focus on STEM and really thinking about boys and girls and how we can inspire them in the STEM fields. We have all of our shows work with educational advisors, and there's some really interesting research that one of those advisors from University of Rhode Island has been doing around kids' depictions of scientists. And so she works with this model, and it's literally called the How to Draw a Scientist tool, or Draw a Scientist tool. And they have kids draw a scientist. And they just say, what is a scientist? So these are preschoolers. And so one of the studies I'll share was 137 preschoolers, and they were asked to draw a scientist. And then they would break those drawings they kind of fell into 3 categories. One of them was a single male wearing a white lab coat. The next one was like superheroes, supervillains in a lair somewhere, doing crazy science. And then the third one is the more accurate depiction. It is people who look like you and me, who are out in the field, who are doing scientific things on the playground and outside, and also working in groups. And so what they learned, they have these kids watch our show, The Cat in the Hat knows a lot about that, which is focused on science and has boys and girls engaged in science activities. And they determined that pre and post, the depictions of scientists they doubled the accurate depictions of scientists over this time period. And the part I thought was also really cool is that, first of all, 49% of girls drew girl scientists before they watched, which I thought was great.
That's great.
After they watched, 86% of girls drew girl scientists. And so this media can be so powerful and early. When children see this early, it can really affect their depiction. So we'll just mention a couple of shows. A year ago, we launched a show called Lila in the Loop, which is focused on
I didn't mention that. Sorry.
trying to make computer science more accessible to kids, to preschoolers. And the creator very specifically wanted a black girl in the lead because that was the group that was the most underrepresented in computer science. And if you watch the show, it's really funny, it's relatable, she's working out, she's problem solving and kind of explaining the basics of computer science in a world that really looks like kids' worlds, you know? She is having trouble with her siblings getting ready for school in the morning, like they're, you know, all fighting over the bathroom and things like that, and she has to come up with a process for how they can work through this and make it work. So that's a great example, and that show is really fun and funny. You can download the free PBS Kids video app and watch it. And then you mentioned Weather Hunters. We're really excited about Weather Hunters. It's coming this summer. It's from Al Roker, and it focuses on weather science and how you can observe weather and understand your community that way. And Al Roker is in the series. He's the voice of the dad, but the focus is Lily Hunter, 7-year-old, is that right? 8-year-old girl, sorry, Deet. An 8-year-old girl, Lila's 7, Lily's 8. And she is observing weather science around her. So another opportunity to really inspire kids.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So talking about making something accessible, making it relatable, the way that you've portrayed your character, Kirsten, clearly has had a tremendous amount of impact. And it was interesting. I heard you say, the fact that I can have all these brains and be a size 12 and do this is fantastic. There are women out there who get used to seeing just one idea of what beauty is, and then you see this totally different person who's not like that, who's not afraid to be smart, who can still wear cute shoes and be girly, but into math and science and the boy stuff. And I think that's why you've acquired such a fan base. But when you go out in the world, like, what has been the impact? What kind of letters? Like, what? I can't even imagine how people are fangirling you besides me.
I do get a lot of, it's exciting. I can tell you, I'm hearing these statistics and it freaks me out. Like, oh no, we need more women in STEM. They all come up to me. Like, I see them. I have a lot of women come up to me, and feminine bent creatures are like, I do this because I watched that show since I was 7, and I get concerned because they should be watching your show when they're 7. But it's wonderful, and you know, it's not like I went out and said I'm going to portray her like this, but they picked me to do it, and I am going to inform the character, and we're clearly neighbors, me and Garcia. We're not the same person, but in terms of like doing things that don't require the male gaze. You know, this is someone who dresses and behaves and does things how she does things. And if you find it attractive, cool. And if you don't, fine. Like, and I don't think that's a priority for her. And I think that that's an important thing we need to develop as women in general. But you know, it's important. It's delightful. I mean, it's lovely and it's great. And I want to hold that up. I know that there are some. You know, when I go down the rabbit hole, which I try not to do because it's dangerous as a performer to like go online and read what people think about you, but I've done it in a very specific way. I've gone online and been like, do you think Garcia is good at computers? You know, you sort of get like this, like from the professionals, which they do come up to me and they say like, I love your portrayal of it, and my office used to be really boring, and because I saw your office, I thought, oh, I'm gonna liven it up a little bit. Or because I saw you wear orange and blue, I wore orange and blue, or I wore red lipstick, or, you know, whatever. And you can think that those things are meaningless, but they're actually not, because putting a little color in your life, or doing that, and taking up space, and just being yourself, instead of trying to hide in the shadows in these kinds of jobs, I think is really important. And so that, it's a real pleasure to do it.
And I have a follow-up for you, because you are a writer, and I also read that you rewrite a lot of the stuff that you say. So has that been welcomed?
Yes, they've always been, I think I do it in a very respectful way. I come from a theater background, and in theater, you don't have the playwright there to tell you, like, that's fine, change that. So you don't change it, you do it exactly. And in television, sometimes I would read something and be like, well, this she could say it more clever. Or like, she could make a joke about a Commodore 64 and a block of cheese right now, and she should. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and that will be funny to people who get that. Like, so I would put these things in and so that's where I go like, what would, WW computer science person do? Like, how would they do that? And then go to my job and be like, can I say it like this? But then I'd also learn it the other way. So once I did that enough, they had enough faith in me, and they were like, you can do it your crazy way, because it makes sense. So I speak her now so well that they give me a lot of leeway. But I always learn it the other way, because sometimes I'll make up a word, or I won't make any sense, and you have to, just honor the community.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you. So Valerie, over to you. You've been very passionate about sustainability, and you said, as a scientist, I've always been interested in our natural world and how we can protect it. And you were also raising 2 kids at the time with climate change. You've directed some amazing shows with science, from Star Trek to Outer Banks and the new NCIS. And can you talk about what you've done in the sustainability and also bringing science to the set? You developed an app called Striptation. You've been doing a lot of sustainability choices on screen. Can you walk through how you're now manifesting that science on set?
Sure, thank you. Great question. I have to just amend what you said. I didn't create Scriptation, but I'm a huge fan. I'm on the board of advisors. I use it.
I just made you a founder.
But thank you. But I was at the engineering Emmys when we won an Emmy, and Kirsten was the most amazing host. That was my first introduction to her. She's brilliant, brilliant, brilliant.
I host the engineering Emmys because I love nerds.
Yeah, and she's so, so smart. Do you improv that evening,
No,
or is
again,
that all
I write
scripted?
it and then act
you
like
write
I
it.
made
It's
it
so
up.
good. She's incredible. Everyone hire her for every event you ever have. She's tremendous. But yes, thank you. So sustainability, really important to me, because I think if you're a scientist and you understand where we all come from and our relationship to the earth, you can't help but be invested in making it a safer, healthier place for all of us. So it is a passion of mine. I've raised $25,000 for the World Wildlife Fund over several years through the Panda Paddle. I do a lot of work in my free time towards sustainable issues, including I'm on the Sustainable Future Committee for the Directors Guild. I'm part of the TV Academy's Climate Roll Call. And my latest project that I'm pitching, if there are any people who want to help fund this project, it's a really, really fun climate change, end of the world, big data story that's satirical and fun and funny and very, very much based in cutting edge science that I feel like I'm the only person who understands it enough to apply it to the story. So my manager's here, come talk to me or him. I think he's still here. But it's a really exciting project. Anyway, that's one of the ways I'm using science. And then on set, it's really important to me to make my sets more sustainable. And then, my science background really helps me communicate with different departments. When I did my PhD at Harvard, I was in a yeast genetics lab and an X-ray crystallography lab. And those two professors did not speak the same language. They're very different disciplines. And so I was a bridge between what they're doing, and it's very much like being on set and making sure my production designer is thinking about the light that my DP wants to use, and making sure everyone's communicating to have the same vision. So that PhD was great training ground for apparently everything I do.
Thank you for that. So I want to talk to Sarah about gaming and PBS games, and you have been extending your STEM shows and most of your shows into games. You've had millions of downloads, and you've looked at it as playful game design for kids who are fearless of tech. How are your games engaging kids, particularly girls, into STEM?
So I'm so glad you asked because I love games. That's where I started in media. I was a game developer first, and so that's kind of how I got into this media space. But other than on the television, the number one activity that a kid does on any other device, a tablet, a phone, anything, is games. Like that's what they're doing. They're playing games. And I think what we at PBS Kids really realize is that the games give kids an opportunity to then practice the skills that they've seen in the show and to try things out. And as we talked about, like you can fail in a game and the consequences are just you get to start over or you might get a hint and you get to move forward. So it's a really great space for kids to kind of practice different concepts. And it gives us a chance to then take some of those learnings from the show and also see how kids are progressing through them, because you can see in the data how well they're learning something. So I'm going to call out Tim McCune over here, who's the creator of Odd Squad. If you all seen Odd Squad, math show. And it's boys and girls who are agents. So this is another great example of, we see every Halloween, we see all of these parents post pictures of their girls dressed up as Odd Squad agents, which I just think is amazing. But then when you go to the Odd Squad website, or if you go to Odd Squad on the PBS Kids Games app, you get to play things like the agents do. Kids get to do what when they watch a show, they want to be that character, they want to do it. And you get to be an agent, and you get to run around and solve crazy problems with math in really fun and funny ways. And so it's a way to really practice it in real life. And I think it's just, gaming is another really great opportunity to get kids connected. And I just will tell one real personal story. As I said, I started really in game development, and I was speaking once on a game panel at South by Southwest, and a group of teenage girls was there. And after the panel, one of the girls came up to me and said, I decided I wanted to start doing CS because of a game I played on PBS Kids. And it was a game I had worked on where you built your own roller coaster. And it was so exciting that she went on to do computer science because of this game she played. And that really is the kind of thing that inspires us.
That's fantastic. Like we said, the world of make-believe has real-world impact.
Real world, yeah.
So unfortunately, that's all the time we have before we go to our next panel. So I want to say thank you, Valerie. Thank you, Kirsten. Thank you, Sarah. They'll be around afterwards. And it is my honor to welcome our next moderator, Carrie Byron, who is a award-winning TV host of Mythbusters and also known as the Crash Test Girl. So I'm going to turn it over to her. Thank you, everybody.
Hello, everybody. You guys have been sitting for a while. Does anybody need to stand up and stretch a little bit? You're allowed to do it right now, because I am super excited to be here. I'll tell you what, Mythbusters was on for about 10 years. Has anybody seen it? Who's here? Yeah, a couple of you? All right. So when we went on in 2003, I had no idea the trajectory my life was going to take. I had no idea I was going to end up being a STEM advocate because I was an artist. But when I started getting my hands dirty and doing science like art, I fell in love. And I got to see the impact and the ripple effect that Mythbusters had because it was being used in schools as a way to teach science. And over the years, parents watched it with their kids. And when I would go to these conventions, I'd have little girls, I'd have women, I'd have dads come up to me and say, my daughter is an engineer because they watched you get so excited on Mythbusters. Or I grew up and I decided I wanted to be a chemist because I liked watching you blow stuff up. And I really, really enjoyed seeing that kind of impact of digital storytelling and what representation can really do to inspire little girls, to inspire little boys, to inspire everyone to see science and STEM differently. Which is why I spent a really long time, years in fact, campaigning to get the National Science Fair back. I hosted it for Obama, and then it went away. And I met the Secretary of Education. I'm like, what happened to the science fair? Because I got to see this amazing moment where kids got to be seen for what they were doing and their inventions and their innovations and their research. And so many of those kids went on to be, to have patents, to go on to be powerful people in STEM. So I spent a very long time being a stalker pretty much, of the Department of Education. We wrestled it away from state, and they helped co-present it last year. But talking to the organizers, I realized that the one regret they had was tying it to one administration. So we decided, we made it the National STEM Festival, made it completely independent of politics, made it bipartisan. We involve all the government agencies, but we got it completely sponsored through corporations, foundations, and people who support STEM, so that the entire STEM community can support the coming up leaders in STEM and make that personal connection that, oh, everyone supports me. The storytellers support me. The scientists support me. The women in tech support me. The engineers, the mathematicians, we are all STEM, and we're going to support them and bring them up. And because we were able to lift all those financial barriers that historically have really just diminished the participation from underserved and underestimated communities, I am so proud to say 57% of the kids who are national STEM champions, representing almost every state and territory, come from Title I schools. And they are overwhelmingly girls, and overwhelmingly girls of color. All right, now I want to bring up the true heroes of science, technology, engineering, and math. Can I have my panelists, please? Woo! Got Savita Raj, CEO of Tech Bridge Girls. Shannon Gilmartin, Director of Research at the Women's Leadership Innovation Lab at Stanford. Suzanne Tendrick of AWS, author of Women of Color in Tech and co-authored book Innovating for Diversity. And Debbie Sterling, founder of Goldie Blocks. Thank you, my women in STEM. I had to mix things up a little bit because we didn't get to practice because planes, trains, and automobiles. I drove through a storm for 4 hours after landing on an airplane that was on for 2, and I only live in San Francisco. All right. I would love to just get to the questions. I'm so excited to have this panel here. I got to briefly talk to all of you, and you are incredibly impressive. I want to start with Savita first. You've been working on diversity and inclusion in tech for your entire career, from Girl Scouts to Boot Up, to Texas Alliance for Minorities in Engineering, to your current role as CEO of Tech Bridge Girls. Okay, first of all, can we just give her that title, right there. All right, so studies show that girls are just as interested in science technology when they're very young, but as they reach junior high, their interests drop off dramatically. What do you think causes this?
The million-dollar question right off the bat, right? So I want to talk about some of the research that tells us what is happening. And I want to start a little earlier. At one of my last jobs, we commissioned a research study where we taught young girls in kindergarten through 3rd grade, 4th grade, some programming and math. And then we gave them a test on the subject that they had just studied. And then we asked them, how do you think you did? And guess what? Every single boy in the class was like, great, A+, I aced it. And when we looked at the actual results, it was a typical bell curve. There were some who did well, some who didn't. But when you asked the girls the same question, the girls had done well, but the curve was shifted left. So every single girl thought she did poorer than she actually did. And this was 4th graders, 3rd graders. And then there's another study that comes out that says girls' confidence in STEM peaks at 9 years old. At 9 is the peak confidence level, which is this 3rd, 4th grade level. This is when girls self-select out of STEM. And then you go on to middle school, junior high. By that time, you've completely self-selected out, and you don't even take the electives that are offered. So the issue begins much earlier, not necessarily in junior high. And without very intentional support and intentional investment in these girls, if their confidence is dropping already at 9 years old, how do we then pull them up, get them to be in STEM, to stay in STEM? So that's one, so the confidence level, etc. Second thing is the story we tell the girls, right? Oh, you're so good at math. It's the toughest subject. And when you go on to be an engineer, you're going to do all this hard stuff. You're going to do integrals and differentiation, and it's all going to be so difficult, but you're going to do it. We think that's the right thing to say. But what is it doing? It's discouraging these girls who are already with a low confidence level at that point from even considering how, pursuing it. Because we know, again, research tells us that girls do hard things and they do it well if they know why they're doing this. So you've got to show them that they can make the world a better place. So again, the storytelling around that, to be highlighting the grand challenges in engineering, for example. Study this so that you can, remove world hunger or solve climate change or build the next whatever machine. So those are the kinds of things. So how do we tell that? And then the third thing, it's been said over and over again. Anne said it really well. I think what Thierry and his team are doing is amazing. The storyline that all of us carry, that all of us tell each other and kind of inadvertently pass on to our girls. I know after all of these presentations, if I were to ask you to just stop for a second and think of a famous scientist, I might get some new answers. But how many of you, if I were to ask you that, would have thought of Einstein as the famous scientist? And in many, many rooms, that is the scientist that they come up with. So how do we change that storyline? How do we highlight the hidden figures, so many of whom were highlighted in the presentations that came in earlier, so I won't call them out. But there are these two young African-American high schoolers who just came up with a proof for the Pythagorean theorem using trigonometry. Even 75 years ago, we were being told this is not going to happen. But here are these young women from New Orleans who just solved this. So telling those stories, highlighting that is critically important. And that is what we do at TechBridge Girls. We tell the stories, the STEM lineage, so girls know they belong and they are part of this wonderful lineage of women, especially women of color, who have made a difference in STEM. And so then they feel they belong, and that gives them the persistence and the strength to persist despite the societal pressures. So those are three big things that happen that kind of move girls and women away from STEM, I would say.
Those are all achievable solutions.
Exactly.
I love what you are doing.
Yes.
All right, Shannon, you are now working as the Director of Research at the Women's Leadership Innovation Lab at Stanford for advancing diversity in K-12 through to C-suite. First, what is the percentage of CS majors at Stanford that are female? And from your work, what do you see as impediments to girls selecting computer science or engineering as their major?
Thank you. Thank you so much. What a wonderful gathering tonight, and so happy to be here with you all. So at Stanford right now, a little over a third of CS degrees, computer science degrees, are awarded to women, which is considerably higher than the national statistic that we've heard time and again tonight. My recent numbers that I saw are about 20%. And I mean, nationally, it's also, I think, really interesting to note that there's really wide variation in those gender ratios across different technical subfields. For instance, like in environmental engineering, one of the smaller engineering fields, actually 50% of those degrees go to women. Kind of wish that that was a bigger field for a lot of different reasons. But then that goes all the way down to about 16-15% in the largest fields in engineering, and those are mechanical engineering, electrical and computer engineering. And when we think about impediments for kind of major selection, the starting salaries in these technical fields are amazing, and the labor markets are really robust. They're really, really strong. And this matters to women and men. These are drivers to everybody. Everybody's making decisions that are informed by kind of what the labor market opportunities are, what starting salaries are, and so on. But as we're seeing, and my comments are so resonant with everybody else's, the cultural messages for women in these technical fields are still so mixed. And we still see people making selections about their major in college in ways that are very much aligned with what's culturally expected of them based on any number of their identities. Where it kind of gets sticky is when the story about major selection kind of really focuses on, well, these are my individual interests. This is expressive of me. When in fact, there's a lot of cultural dimensions around those individual interests. The stories that get told around students and in families and all over society is kind of, what is your individual interest and how can your major kind of reflect that? And we end up losing sight of those cultural dimensions that we really have to keep our eyes on, as we've learned, because the culture is the way into change. Other impediments, lack of community in these fields, cultural signposting that just is not welcoming to so many, and kind of biased evaluations over and over again, persistently favoring culturally masculine, typed behaviors, men's experiences. The research is really clear, and we've heard a lot of great research tonight, that chilly climates absolutely still exist in many technical spaces that really devalue what women are bringing to the table, and some women more than others, some groups of women more so than others.
That's why we love the Scully effect so much. Let's show more of that. All right, Suzanne, being a cloud specialist at Amazon, you are actually working in tech. As we've heard, retention of women in tech field is a big challenge. What is one or two major causes of the steep attrition rate of 50% dropout from the tech field for women by the age of 35? Oh my God, please fix this.
Oh.
What can we do?
Oh man, so much pressure.
I know, right?
So there's a lot to that question. I think for the sake of our conversation, I'll focus on two things that I think are very important. The first is culture, and the second is equity. So when we think about workplace cultures, I think we can all mutually agree about what we think are overt, terrible examples of bias and discrimination that happen in the workplace. I think what doesn't get called out as often is those very implicit, very subtle forms that are very pervasive. So thinking about a woman in tech versus a man in tech, the questions that you might be asked are, am I being invited to talk at technical presentations, or am I being asked to take notes and arrange, for the meeting and getting lunch or breakfast or whatever the case may be? Am I asking to be invited to contribute to a technical paper, or am I being asked to just, make some edits and keep it moving? It's these very, very subtle things, but when you don't have that representation, that visibility, it makes you think, well, gee, am I welcome here? Is anything that I'm doing here valued, and do I really have a place, in this particular organization? So it's those very, very subtle biases that I think affect how people perceive how welcome they are. I also specifically focus on equity because diversity is very important. Inclusion is very important. Equity needs to be part of that conversation, and specifically thinking about women having pay parity, opportunity parity. These are the primary reasons why, given all of the other things that are going on, women don't persist, because they don't feel as if they have a future, not so much in that organization, but just in tech in general. Speaking very candidly, I had the opportunity to co-author a book called Innovating for Diversity, which evaluates case studies on what innovative companies have done to help bring in more diversity into their organizations. And I had the chapter of talking about, well, how do we promote mid to senior level people to higher ranks? There are no shortage of early career intervention, career programs, But when it comes to women wanting to perhaps get to mid or senior level, those programs diminished considerably. And to be honest, it was a very depressing chapter to write. But I think it points to a very big issue and a big problem that unless we talk about these biases and we really try to address them, as well as giving actual mechanisms for women to be successful, I think we're just going to see this continue.
Okay. I was hoping for a happier ending to that answer. We're going to get there. We still have more questions to ask. Debbie, I've been on many panels with you about women in engineering because you are kind of my hero in this field. You have made a career out of being a disruptor in the traditional pink aisle toy space by creating engineering toys and media geared towards girls. How can we keep girls seeing themselves in STEM, and what role did representation in media play in your journey?
Thank you very much, Carrie. Great to be on another panel with you and all of these incredible women. So I was thinking about this. It's funny, as a little girl, my favorite cartoon was actually Inspector Gadget. Yeah, was there other Inspector Gadget fans in the house? But as we know, Inspector Gadget was a man. And I was thinking about this. All of the cartoons that I grew up with as a girl, it was the boy genius archetype, right? It was Handy Manny and Sid the Science Kid and Jimmy Neutron and Bill Nye the Science Guy. And so when I started my company, Goldie Blocks, more than 12 years ago now, at the time there still really weren't any, girl, I mean, there probably were some, but like not well-known girl engineer characters. And so I was like, well, I guess I'll create my own Goldie Blocks, girl engineer, and I should make some toys to go with her that would get girls to want to build. And at the time, it was very clear. There's like the blue aisle is for boys and the pink aisle is for girls. And the blue aisle has all the like math and science and building toys, and the pink aisle has dolls. And in the blue aisle, all the building toys, they have media characters on them, right? They've got Star Wars and so when I started Goldie Blocks, it was really at the time like a very groundbreaking idea. And it kind of went viral right away because people were like, why is the world this way? Wait a minute, like this feels like the 1950s. This is not, and we want more for our girls. And I remember being at my very first maker fair, and I had this little booth with my little toy prototypes. And I remember somebody came up to me and was like, I've got a great idea. You should put Tinkerbell on your toys. And I'm like, but Tinkerbell's not an engineer, And I'm really proud that I feel like we've come a long way over the last 12 years. And there are now, there is more, 1 point more representation of girls and women in STEM than there were when I started, but we still have a long way to go. And I bring this point up in particular with my journey because I think that it's important to point out that when we talk about the development of children, media and toys go hand in hand. And toys are also very influential in terms of like you watch something, you get inspired by it, and then you want to go and have a hands-on experience that can also really build skills. And so when it comes to the world of STEM, in this regard, boys have been encouraged and had an advantage for a very long time. So there's still a lot of catch-up work to do, and I think there's still a really huge opportunity. It's really important.
And it's not just our daughters that we need to show. We need to show our sons and just our children in general so that it just becomes normalized that girls are in those roles. So that when you're in the workplace, no matter who you are or what gender you are, you see a woman and it doesn't seem strange. Like that's the amazing opportunity as storytellers that we can have. Savita, how can Hollywood help young girls feel more confident in their ability to succeed and to thrive in tech?
Well, people in this room, the Hollywood folks, you're no strangers to storytelling, and that is going to be the key to make girls feel like they belong. You're already coming up with lots of ideas, like the ones with PBS Kids. So continue, please, to tell us those stories where it's normalized to have a woman of color, be doing STEM activities just as a matter of course, not as an exception, but just this is what she does. It's normal, it's no big deal. That's where we need to get to. And tell these stories, because we've heard from so many people so far that these Hollywood stories, these PBS stories do make a difference in people's lives. We were looking at some research recently, and more than 50% of parents said that they do not encourage their daughters to go into STEM fields. Literally, more than 50% of parents. And it's not because they don't want their girls to go into STEM per se, but because they've heard this storyline that this is a tough field, this is a misogynistic field, this is a place where girls are not made to feel welcome, which we've all experienced. I quit my engineering job because my manager at the time told me, oh, you have a baby, but you have to travel. You know, when I travel, I take my dog everywhere. And I just get a dog sitter. And I'm like, do you hear yourself? and this was before the Family Leave Act and all of that. So I quit. That was the only choice for me, unless what was I going to do? Nursing a baby and trying to be an engineer traveling around the country. Anyway, so tell us these stories, make it normal, make it possible for girls to see themselves. And we've all heard these stories, and we've all experienced it personally, where when there is a role model, when there is representation, when girls can see themselves, then they can thrive. And that's what we at TechBridge have been doing for 25 years. I want to call that out in the spirit of all of the anniversaries. And I'd love to celebrate that and think about the stories we could tell of these 25 years and of these 100 years and these 20 years as a group. So if any of you want to tell our story, or if you have other ideas to celebrate and party with us, find me. I'd love to collaborate with folks from here.
Thank you. All right, Shannon, computing used to be considered woman's work. In fact, I mean, the first computer scientist, Ada Lovelace, hello. But now it's stereotyped as men's work. Do you think that if Hollywood educates the public about the history of women in computing, that can help? Would it make a difference for young women considering majoring in computer science in college if they could see that on the screens?
Absolutely. I love this question so much because I think that there are so many her stories and their stories and groups of people's stories that can be told that haven't been told yet, that are connected to computing and engineering and really merit a place on stage. Particularly when they can be connected to current times and help young people make sense of what they are experiencing right now. And in some ways, that's not the job of a filmmaker to overtly make those connections. Some of those conversations can happen around a piece of media. And I think there's also some really fun opportunities to write stories that kind of cross time and space and bring to life some really interesting connections of characters in different eras. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity there. And I guess just to kind of end my thought on this, both the representation is so important to see people doing in these roles that are not stereotyped to be such, and then really pictorializing and scripting what we know to be true in research about how bias works. So showing women and groups of women grappling with cultural barriers and how they collectively come together and challenge that. Those kinds of stories of kind of, social progress based on group action is just like so cool, and just there's so much space and opportunity for that. So I'm really excited. What a great connection of all of the people here tonight.
Suzanne, besides being a cloud specialist at Amazon, you also have written 2 books on diversity in tech. What is a key message from your books that folks in Hollywood should know?
Yeah, so I think there are 2 things, and I think the first has been echoed in all of our conversations tonight, which is representation yields possibility. And so myself, I got into tech much later in life, and I do think that part of it was that I didn't see people like me doing these things. I didn't know what the art of the possible was. And I do wonder sometimes that if I did see that, what the trajectory of my life might have been if I saw that on a regular basis and it was normalized for me. So I think it's great to see TVs and movies really showing strong female technologists who are unabashedly brave, smart, not necessarily trying to cater to the male gaze. Like they're doing their thing. And I think the more representation that we see of that, I think the better for everyone. The second is allyship. And it's actually a theme that I heard a lot of today, in that in tech, we have a lot of inherent strengths, but we need a collective community in order to amplify those. We need to have Hollywood, we need to have marketing, we need to have all of the strengths of everyone to be able to bring more women into the tech pipeline and to keep them there and to have them be successful. So I think if we keep working together and forging a very strong bond, I'm very optimistic for the future.
That was a much happier ending. I appreciate you for flipping that around. From America, I want a Hollywood happy ending. All right, I realize that every conversation I have these days devolves or evolves at some point into AI. And Debbie, I know that with the changing landscape of media, you've begun to really lean into AI for storytelling. What are some of the emerging trends that you see that Hollywood could use to further the mission of female representation? Because right now, I just saw a post on LinkedIn where it's like, it took 30 different prompts when they asked what a scientist looked like before it came up with a female, because there's an entire beast of media bias feeding these models, which are just going to reinforce these models. So I think that what you're doing is so amazing, and I'd like to know what you have been seeing in this technology and media.
Thank you. Okay. I've been going down a deep rabbit hole with AI. And there was one thing I wanted to say that kind of is related to this, that I wanted to make sure I said before. So we've got Hollywood people in the room. I've noticed that there has been some small effort to have more representation of women engineers in STEM on screen and film TV lately. But it has been, a lot of that I've seen, and I won't point out any specifics, but it's like, oh yeah, we should have a woman, so we're gonna put her in, and she's just like really smart, and that's it. And I appreciate the effort, but I have to say that is intimidating for these girls that have that are struggling with their self-confidence, and they see it and they think like, oh well, she's a genius and she already knows everything. Well, that's not me. So I think that is just missing the mark. And I think that if I've heard one theme tonight over and over again, it's really about creating more realistic, authentic, well-rounded characters that is really going to move the needle. So and I just need to make sure I say that before I get off this stage. In AI, the issue is that these stereotypes are so deep-rooted in our culture and in our training data, it's going to be popping up over and over again. And then talk about the culture and the programmer culture that is not welcoming to women. In my rabbit hole of AI, I'm teaching myself how to make AI, and so I'm going into open source and learning how to code, and I am like the only person there who's not making porn. I am not exaggerating.
Wow.
No, I know. No, it's like really. So, and I don't mean to this like shock, but I'm not exaggerating. It's
I wish I
real.
was more shocked.
No. So, how can Hollywood use AI? No, but like
I didn't say the Valley. I said Hollywood.
no, I think right now the early adopters are mostly men making porn. I think there's a huge opportunity though with AI to test and experiment with new content, new formats inexpensively. In many ways, AI will, whether Hollywood likes it or not, democratize content creation. It's coming. And it gives people, you know, the tools at their fingertips to be able to make really high quality content, you know, quickly and cheaply and efficiently. And that's exciting to someone like me who's had a story to tell for a long time, who in many ways has felt rejected by Hollywood and has had to kind of DIY it. And, you know, I've been able to build over 1 million followers on YouTube, and Goldie Blox is probably one of the most successful girls in STEM channels. And I'm really proud of that. But thank you.
Yeah.
It's because I've insisted on telling a story of a well-rounded, flawed character in STEM, which isn't something necessarily that falls into the bucket of what people normally want to make, but it's just something that's true to my heart. And I think that AI is going to enable more people to be able to play around, kind of experiment and tell these stories. And I think for anybody in the room, I think there is a huge opportunity to leverage AI to maybe take more risks, because you can more inexpensively produce and try stuff out. You know, you can create a lot more, like storyboard, ideate, using these tools. And I think you can also leverage AI to try and work with some awesome female AI engineers to also like innovate and think of new ways to take the content and stories that you're producing and maybe create interactive formats or new forms of media that haven't even been created yet. So anyway, I'm going kind of on a soapbox, but that's
I think
my
that
answer.
we're actually on a giant soapbox. That is what we are here for.
We're on a soapbox.
I also think that this is an opportunity to create more content that feeds the beast, that reinforces the messages that we want to hear. We want to see more of you out there as the STEM heroes, but also just everyday STEM. Like, this is what you do. We're getting to the point here where I do want to open this up for audience questions, if you guys have any questions. So I believe we have... Okay, like one question? Oh my God, I talked too long, you guys. Somebody raise your hand quick, or I'm just gonna keep talking. Back here. I can hear you, you're right there. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Make them say it. Who wants to take that one?
I'll try to take that. I completely agree with you, and I think what's troubling is that with the dismantling of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in most corporate organizations now, it's actually having the opposite effect. What people didn't realize was that the efforts that were made under DEI were actually allowing for mentorship, leadership programs for women. So it's actually doing the exact opposite of, I think, what they intended. I don't have a crystal ball as to what's going to happen, but I will say that I think people are aware, people are upset, they're unhappy, and I think people are going to fight to make sure that we don't slide back into where we were 30, 40 years ago. We want to maintain the progress that we've made for women in technology as much as we can. and we're going to fight. We have to fight for it, simply put.
Thank you.
Can I just add one more thing?
Yeah.
I think, right now, the programmers are having a moment. And so, if there was ever a time to elevate women in tech and bring them up to that star status, like I have an 8-year-old son who is just like, Elon Musk is so great, and he made this car, and he's so rich, and I just wish there were more women in tech that were household names that were as elevated as Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk, and Hollywood has the opportunity to do that.
And if any of you guys need a little bit of hope, take a look at the National STEM Festival. Kids coming all the way from reservations to farmland, Kansas, to urban, from the Bronx. Like, we're talking about a little girl who created a 3D printed incubator so that it can be mobile in war zones. We're talking about another little girl who is using mealworms to recycle plastic as well as create proteins. These girls are out there. And so if you want to see some good stories, help me support them and go check them out. I just want to bring the change I want to see. Support those girls so they can become these women. Thank you, guys. Thank you for the panel. And I will hand this off. I feel like there should be out music. This is what science looks like. This is what tech looks like. This is what... Yeah, nobody's joining me. Damn, I thought I had that.
So I think there's some key takeaways, from tonight, and it's really about collective impact and also collective efforts. And so I think it's really important for everyone to stay united. It's impact over intent. So you have some homework. First of all, you need to buy Goldie Blocks. You need to watch PBS Kids. You need to watch Criminal Minds. You need to watch Mythbusters. You need to fund Valerie's movie. You need to donate to TechBridge Girls. You need to buy Suzanne's books, Tedrick. She has 2. I'm sure they're on Amazon. And then also our study, which we mentioned, Portray Her 2.0, is on our website. And then one of our partners, again, we're generously funded by If Then, which is an initiative of Lyda Hill Philanthropies. They have a redo of their If Then website, which just went live. And of course, these events don't happen by themselves. So I really want to thank Jasmine Barad, where Jasmine disappear, Emily Spalding, Jackie Stansberry, Anna, and then Keisha. I just want to say thank you so much for all of your support. And the final word is going to go with our birthday party celebration. Thierry's going to come back up. Oh, no, go ahead.
So I really don't know what to say. Actually, I was asked yesterday, have you thought about your closing words? And I was like, I really don't know what to say. I'm going to go with the flow. So first of all, I want to thank Madeline, GDI. I also want to thank our team at Bell Labs, and I think Melissa is there in the back. Thank you so much. She helped a lot to organize this from our side. Thank all of you for coming and the panelists. I just go, wow. I'm actually really impressed, humbled, and inspired to just keep going and for us to continue. And so many great words. I won't add to the homework list. I think your list was pretty long already. But what struck me is that there is so many good things that are happening, and I think the power of Hollywood is really to amplify it. And a lot of things happen maybe in small scale, in different locations, different places, and Hollywood can really start to amplify that, and that same story be told to more people. And it's one story, but millions will see it. And I think that's maybe the biggest power you have. But also, don't be afraid to reach out to the tech industry, to work with tech industry, tell the story of technologies and show the technologies, the researchers, the engineers that are building this behind the scenes that everybody uses. The young girls using that technology, they don't know necessarily how it's created. Do they know how an iPhone was created? They're using it every day. but they don't necessarily understand or know the technology stories behind it and how exciting that could be to see if I can work on that, I can create something like an iPhone that billions of people will use. So tell the stories and reach out to the tech industry to find these stories, to show the transformative power of technology. And that's maybe the other element that I would suggest you think about, how you portray tech roles in movies, in TV, media, and so forth, but also reach out and tell the stories of technology that everybody uses every day, but may not be aware, may not know about. So I would just leave it with that. Thank you again so much, Madeline. Hopefully this was the first one, and we'll do it again in a year. And I hope we added more than 1 point to it, but let's start with 1 point next year and then go from there. So thank you very much.